All right, welcome back to another episode of Chat Room. This is Michael, and I'm with my co host.
John?
And today we're going to talk about high school education, and specifically kind of what classes matter. What classes do we think now, 10 to 20 years, depending on which one of us you're talking about, still has any relevancy? Because, yeah, it's one of those things where at the time you're already in a class and you're kind of like, oh, will I ever use this? And now, for us, mid 30s, early 20s, kind of like, no, we won't use this. Why are we still doing this? And I just wanted to start with kind of looking at, because John, you, like, if you don't mind saying, what year did you graduate high school?
I graduated in 2016.
Okay, yeah, see, and for me it's '03. And, I'm curious too how much of this has changed because I already say I've got a list up here of the required credits for Tennessee, at least, for kind of public education. And
Yeah.
some of them are a little different than I expected. I came into this topic, which a great topic, John. Glad you suggested it. And I came into this thinking, oh, wow, this is the class I want to add. This is the one I want to add. But they've already kind of got a couple of those, so we'll see. But okay, they require a total number of 22 credits. I'm gonna go fast, so the math for that doesn't really matter. And speaking of math, math is first, 4 credits, algebra 1, 2, geometry, and then a higher level math. English, 4 credits. Science, 3 credits, could include biology, chemistry, or physics, or a lab. Social studies includes U.S. history, geography, world history, geography, U.S. government, and civics, or economics. PE, 1.5 credits. Personal finance, half credit. Foreign language, 2 credits. Fine art, 1 credit. And elective focus, consisting of math and science or career and technical education. And I'll just say the technical education is really long, but I'll hit on that later because a lot of those were actually really applied schools or applied skills, including everything from welding to crafting, and that kind of surprised me. But
hmm
let me start with you, John, and say, yeah, if you could kind of remove a class and then substitute it with something, what would that be?
Well, so to start off, I think, like your history classes, your math classes, and your science classes, and your reading classes are like what takes up majority of your credits. I'm a big fan of the skill credits, but I'm going to go with those four because I feel like those consume most of your time in high school.
Yeah,
Um, and if I had to get rid of one subject, it would be history. Now, a lot of people are going to hate on me for saying that, but history, I mean, it's it's not real like with the way technology is like advanced nowadays, like you can pretty much learn history like as you go throughout life. And I don't really see like the benefits it does for like 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds and like 18-year-olds. You know what I mean? Like outside of school. Like I just really don't like I get it. It's our world history. It's how our world works. Even somebody at work today said that history repeats itself. I get it, but not really in a way. You know what I mean? It doesn't really repeat itself as far as like your personal life and like your personal finances and your personal skills in life. That part does not repeat. Maybe the economy or maybe like politicians, that part might repeat. Or like, like wars and stuff like that might repeat. But as far as your personal self, history does not repeat because you're going to be completely different than your parents and your parents were completely different than their parents. So I don't agree with history. I think it's a lot of unnecessary time if I had to take one of the subjects out of school. And one of the biggest classes that I would replace that history class with is career preparation. And I just kind of made up that class in my head. But that class would consume of, multiple years throughout high school, and that would, help prep for college. That would help prep you for being a parent. That would help prep you for doing your taxes. That would help prep. You can hit different subjects within that career prep class, but it wouldn't just be focused on one thing. I personally graduated college and I had no idea that, you file your taxes every year. I know that sounds crazy, but never had to do it. Never really had like a, a job with enough income where I was required to do it. And, I mean, there's a lot of skills you wish the simple skills that you got in all that time of school that you did not get in high school. So that's where I'm going to start off with.
yeah. So you're saying in your curriculum, history is history,
Mm-hmm.
but replace it with, yeah, some real life skills.
You're right.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. Yeah, and I say that, and I actually really love history. But when
Sorry.
you No, no, no. When you pitched this topic and you said like what relevancy does knowing who Alexander the Great, is in this day and era, I'm like, that seems fair. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and I hope that made sense a little bit about like I get it about the history repeating itself, but your personal self, like in your skills and benefiting you throughout life, that part's never gonna repeat. You get to do it once. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and this will probably come to something that I want to bring up later, which is just how even different countries do their school systems.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'll get to that in a minute. And first, kind of let me say, you took like a kind of a broad category. I wanted to get rid of
Yeah.
it. I couldn't really like just do anything as broad as like science, history,
Yeah.
English. So I got much more granular.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I feel unless you know you're specifically going into certain sciences, that stuff like biology and chemistry, I cited those two specific.
Hmm.
I even went into geography with a focus in meteorology. So I did sciences. I had to do calculus for mine. So I had to do those complicated maths that, thankfully I don't always have to do calculus in high school.
Yeah.
But biology, no. And I mean, specifically, I would even replace that with something more like environmental science.
Hmm.
Biology, I feel, is kind of like, you're learning about like mitochondria and cells and how they divide and genuses of animal systems and, families of animals and all that good stuff,
Yeah.
which, is fine if you're going into zoology for the animals. If you're going into medical fields, that's fine. But just the average person, I think it's more important to know about kind of the environment as it is now, as it pertains to us now. I think it's
Hmm.
even a similar thing like with your history. Like my pushback there would be, if we taught maybe more modern history, it didn't
Yeah.
all have to go back to like the ancient Greeks and the ancient Egyptians, something that applies to now. And that's what I feel with biology versus like environmental science. That
Yeah.
it just seems so much relevant. Similarly, chemistry, knowing that sodium chloride is like NaCl3 is not, or I'm sure I got that wrong too. I don't remember that. But I'm sure,
We're gonna stick with H2O.
yeah, yeah, there we go. That one I know.
Yeah.
It's not making a big impact in my life
Hmm.
in general. And, that one maybe even more than the other. It's hard for me to see the general applicability, for kind of a broad audience of high school students going
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah. I
And
definitely agree with that statement.
yeah, so if I'm getting rid of like two classes, then I was definitely thinking, again, environmental science kind of replace biology. And kind of like you, I was thinking if there's something more practical. In the past, you would have had things like home ec, which was skewed towards women and kind of like a home life, very outdated kind of view.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
but like practical skills, and I'm like, yeah, do that part of it. Don't make it so gendered necessarily. And yeah, things like taxes. You don't necessarily have to know how to balance a checkbook. That's always an example I find older people, but money management. And one of the reasons I wanted to read the whole list is it did have personal finance as half a credit. But half a credit sounds like one semester the whole year. And maybe it's
Yeah.
pretty
It
comprehensive.
almost sounds like half a credit. Almost sounds like you take it from. I think high school starts like high school starts in August. It almost sounds like you take it from August to December, or vice versa, January to whatever high schoolers get out, May, April. I don't know,
Yeah.
but that's what a half credit almost sounds like. Because
No, I think you're right. Because, yeah, that is short. And, I
yeah.
mean, again, I'm sure you can cover a lot of stuff, but I feel that's an area you can put more in.
Hmm. And it'll benefit your whole life, like whether you run a business, whether you are doing stuff in a business with money, whether you're doing your own personal finances with your wife or husband or by yourself. I mean, it's just very beneficial to have those normal skills, because it's not even like a set skill, it's just like a normal skill that every human should feel confident about when they're becoming an adult.
Oh, definitely. I mean, more education about debt and personal
Hmm.
finance would help so many people as they're making the choice to incur debt to go to college.
Yeah, most of them don't figure it out the damage they did until about sophomore year, and they don't even want to be there anymore.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah. I mean, the dropout rate in college is a whole nother thing with that. So yeah, there's a lot to it, which kind of so that brings me back to the discussion I want to have about how kind of other countries do it. So
Hmm.
what's interesting is Europe, especially, and I think England's the one I'm most familiar with. But I know a lot of that is when you're pretty young. I think to 14 to 15, you kind of already take these tests, like kind of determines your path. And it is like, are you more of a skilled worker? Are you going to be more into liberal arts, English art and so on, the humanities?
Yeah,
And that's something we don't do. We do try to provide a fairly comprehensive education the whole time. College still has general education. Would you, John, yourself prefer a mode where maybe at a younger age, even by like ninth grade, that's the year, depending on your tests, your scores, or your interests, you choose, okay, I want to go into these practical kind of fields or these trade fields, or I want to go, this other creative direction. Like, would that have interested you, or do you think that's something that could even work here?
yeah, I definitely think going into high school, you should be able to, kind of get a more narrow education, like pathway for where you want to go. Most definitely.
Yeah, it's always fascinating me because I definitely see the benefit. I do feel I would be the one problem is I always joke, probably less now. I really like my career path now, but for a long time I worked at a job, two jobs ago, I guess, for 10 years, and I would even joke then I still don't know what I want to do for a living. And so that
Yeah.
that would be the one issue I could see is if there's not like a method for the people who are still unsure, because
Hmm.
14 to 15 is kind of early.
Yeah.
But, I'm hoping that's where they would have those kind of more frank discussions that often, again, we kind of alluded to, we don't have so many times. It's just go to college. And I say that I loved college, and I think that's a great experience for so many people. But
Hmm.
yeah, that's often leaving out the values of community colleges or other non-traditional schools
Right.
and just so many other things. And I feel like the pressure is there anyways. Why not give kids more, like time and more of a channel to figure out what it is they want and want to focus on?
Yeah, and I definitely think like if you being that young, like if you let's say I wanted to go into like the electrical field, and then I might have wanted to work on power lines, and then going into college, you're like, okay, I know a decent amount to where I could get like an entry level job as an electrician, but I don't want to do this anymore. You can totally switch it. You know what I mean? Like, but the fact that you still learn that skill and can pick that skill back up after high school, it actually seems like rewarding to graduate high school versus like, okay, I passed some social studies tests, somehow managed to pass algebra, somehow managed to pass geometry, somehow managed to pass this one Spanish class that I took, and then you're like, okay, so what now? But like, it's like even if you didn't want to go to college, it's like, well, what was that 4 years for? Friends and summer and Kool Aid, or like, you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
at least you didn't waste the time. Even if it might have been a waste of time, you still learned something whether you liked it or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, I do think there's a value to, the general populace having more education as a whole, but, finding some of the classes that you want to do earlier. I always was kind of told that, the last 2 years of college were supposed to be harder, but really,
Not true.
yeah, I didn't think that was true. One, because you kind of get your groove, but also, you're by that point mostly just focusing on the classes in your topic of interest. And
Right.
when you're interested in something, more interested to learn it. It can still be
Hmm.
hard, but yeah, you're like, this is what I've been waiting for. This is what I want to do. You
Yeah.
can't always sprinkle that in freshman, sophomore, because you're getting that gen ed out of the way. So,
Yeah.
yeah, just something I wanted to bring up for this topic as we're
Yeah.
talking about again, kind of alternate classes and what we think works best. But we're curious if you would drop a subject, what would that subject be? If you drop a class, what would that class be? Let us know in the comments. And thank you as always for following Chat Room.
You're right. And don't forget to like and subscribe.